It's a zombie drama that even Netflix wants to remake, and it's so addictive it's worth it. The story begins on the set of a reality show indoors. The protagonist, Kelly, is a newcomer to the production crew and is relegated to serving tea and water to the staff for the time being. But she is determined not to be confined to this role and deliberately tries to seduce Danny to climb higher up the ladder. Amidst the busy crew, no one notices the news broadcast about a zombie attack. At this moment, Kelly receives a call from her boyfriend, Rick. To avoid disrupting the shoot, she heads to the rooftop to take the call. Rick hastily informed Kelly that he was driving towards the set when he encountered a family of 3 flagging down cars on the roadside. Unexpectedly, the couple hijacked his car, leaving Rick stranded and forced to wait for the light rail to reach the set. Rick had found out that Kelly hadn't come home last night and had spent the night with her supervisor. Rick knows that Kelly will dump him as soon as she gets to a higher position. That's why Rick rushed to the film set to declare his sovereignty. Kelly is furious about Rick's actions, and they have a heated argument over the phone. As they continue arguing, the phone suddenly loses signal. Meanwhile, 2 late actors are on their way to the set. Unexpectedly, they find a car on the roadside seemingly in trouble. The driver steps out to inspect the situation. After Kelly answered her boyfriend's call, she couldn't wait to play double sports with Danny in the office. At the same time, the injured driver lies bleeding on a woman's lap in the car. The car heads towards the set at high speed as there happens to be a doctor on the production team. However, the driver succumbs to his injuries shortly before reaching the set. And the next thing you know, the car stopped in front of the post. Seeing no one exiting the car, the security guard approaches and shines a flashlight on the window, revealing streaks of blood. Having just finished their exercise, Danny and Kelly plan to step outside for a smoke, only to witness a strange scene. Meanwhile, the control room also comes under attack from the zombies. Everyone scatters to escape, but the swift-moving zombies catch up. In the end, they all become a feast for the zombies, one by one. On the other side, Kelly was arguing with Chloe about Danny, and didn't realize what was going on outside. As they were quarreling, they noticed Danny approaching. Before they could react, Danny lunged at Chloe. Kelly attempted to separate them but was taken aback by Danny's terrifying appearance. She quickly retreated into the adjacent room and barricaded the door with a cabinet. Later, watching the news on TV, Kelly realized that a zombie crisis had erupted outside. She was left with no choice but to accept her fate. In despair, Kelly curled up in a corner, hugging her knees. Danny's roars continued to echo in her ears, and she didn't know if she would survive until tomorrow. The following morning, Kelly woke up from her sleep, only to find that the outside was crawling with zombies, resembling a hellish scene. Clearly, staying here was a death sentence. So, Kelly moved the cabinet aside and peeked out through the door crack. After confirming the silence outside, she cautiously ventured out with scissors in hand. Unfortunately, Danny, who was having breakfast, noticed Kelly's presence. In her panic, Kelly used the door to fend off Danny, but after all, she was not strong enough. Danny swoops Kelly onto the table. Kelly fought back desperately, stabbing with the scissors randomly, unintentionally plunging them into Danny's head, finally ending him. On the other side of the set, the actors had no idea what was going on outside. They were merely wondering why the crew hadn't come to wake them up and why the cameras weren't rolling. Little did they know that the crew filming them had already transformed into horrifying zombies. Simultaneously, Kelly finally made her way to the truck. She reached for the keys in the truck driver's hand when a zombie swiftly lunged at her. Kelly turned and fled, but her screams attracted more zombies. Luckily, Kelly reacted quickly and hid behind a fence. Subsequently, Kelly took refuge in a nearby area where actors were shooting. There was also a zombie eating breakfast inside. Kelly rushed into the studio and locked the zombie behind the door, and the actors in the studio are arguing about what happened. They saw Kelly come in covered in blood and thought it was a new episode. No matter how Kelly explained, they thought she was joking. Kelly told them they couldn't open the door now that there were zombies outside. However, actor Marky, full of skepticism, opened the door. The bald zombie outside burst in and lunged at Marky. This sudden scene startled everyone in the room. Thankfully, Kelly acted quickly. She grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and smashed the bald zombie's head to pieces. The horrifying sight left everyone in a state of panic. What would be their next move? A once sensational reality show had turned into a feast for zombies. As zombies attacked the control room, the producer Patrick desperately held the door shut against their onslaught. Eventually, Patrick managed to escape to the restroom and used a wheelchair-bound man to block the pursuing zombie, narrowly escaping. Meanwhile, the actors on the set finally believed Kelly's words due to the sudden zombie attack. They strongly demanded to leave the area. However, outside had already become a zombie-infested land, making escaping a certain death. Kelly led everyone to the rooftop. As they gazed at the apocalyptic scene outside, a sense of despair washed over them all. On the other side, Patrick had spent the night crouched in the restroom. On the other hand, Patrick squatted in the toilet for a night and realized that the wheelchair zombies don't know how to use a wheelchair, and then gathered courage to bypass the wheelchair zombies. However, he turned a corner only to encounter another zombie feasting. Patrick was so frightened that he turned and fled, inadvertently hiding in eliminated contestant Pippa's room. Since Patrick had eliminated Pippa, neither side gave the other a good look. After a night of stress, Patrick was desperate for a release and took a swig of champagne. He even defecated in the bin. Pippa was so disgusted she wanted to throw Patrick out to the zombies. The desperate crowd on Kelly's side of the room were each in their own way. The scene outside caught them all off guard, except for Kelly, who single-handedly cleaned up the shattered zombie remains. Beneath her seemingly fragile exterior, she possessed a resilient and strong heart. Meanwhile, Angel, who had been bitten by the bald zombie, was deteriorating rapidly. Kelly had contemplated ending Angel's suffering swiftly, but the others vehemently intervened. They had no choice but to temporarily isolate Angel in the greenhouse for observation. Having nursing experience, Grayson didn't want to give up on Angel, but they lacked the necessary medical supplies. Kelly indicated she knew a nearby supermarket that held everything they needed. She didn't want to risk going out, but she'd starve to death if she stayed here. Joplin and Veronica were upstairs attracting the zombies with noise. Meanwhile, Kelly, Space, and Marky slipped out through the back door. They swiftly reached the car, but Marky was spotted by a zombie. Fortunately, Marky's athleticism allowed him to dive into the car, successfully evading the zombie. Simultaneously, the city's transportation system had ground to a halt. Rick had spent a night waiting at the station, eventually deciding to search for a ride. But in the next second, Rick did not hesitate to run. Finally, he hid in a convenience store and survived. When the zombie outside the door was suddenly shot in the head, a woman with a shotgun arrived. Upon confirming Rick was human, the woman asked him to grab supplies and leave with her. The woman's name was Alex. She had initially intended to drive to the seaside for refuge, but due to the scarcity of supplies, she saved Rick. However, they hadn't gone far when the car inexplicably stalled. Rick lifted the hood only to find it filled with zombie remains and fur, remnants from when Alex had rammed through a few zombies with the car. Zombies were closing in around them, and Alex had to constantly fire her gun to fend them off. Until the end of the night, Alex's gun barrel was so hot, but Rick did not repair the car. Seeing Rick's clumsiness, Alex couldn't help but express his displeasure to him. Just as they argued, a horde of zombies approached from nearby. They had no choice but to abandon the car and flee desperately. Luckily, they spotted a mansion ahead. With a narrow escape, they leaped over the iron gate. In a split second, Alex backhanded Rick across the face after they crossed the gate. Subsequently, with her gun in hand, Alex led the way. They cautiously entered the mansion, unsure if they would encounter people or zombies. As for Kelly's group, their fate hung in the balance. Could they obtain the medicine and return safely? Kelly and her companions, fleeing from the zombies, arrived at a supermarket not far away in search of medicine, leaving Space in the car as lookout. Kelly and Marky entered the supermarket through the back door armed with weapons. Kelly made some noise to test the waters and confirmed that there were no zombies inside. They began scavenging for supplies and medicine. On the other side, after confirming the safety of the mansion, Rick and Alex settled down temporarily. Rick managed to fix the TV, which happened to be broadcasting the reality show where Kelly worked. However, all that could be seen was a chaotic scene. Meanwhile, when Space noticed they hadn't returned for a long time, he decided to leave the car and check the situation. Coincidentally, a police car passed by, facing the barrels of two police officers' guns. Space immediately knelt down and pleaded. Once they determined Space wasn't a zombie, the officers decided to join him and head to the set for refuge. Inside the supermarket, Kelly and Marky were scavenging for supplies. Suddenly, Marky accidentally dropped his pry bar, creating a sharp clanging noise that attracted zombies. Without thinking about anything else, they grabbed their stuff and ran out of the store. No sooner had they escaped than the zombies swarmed over them. While the police officer's shooting accuracy was lacking, they still managed to eliminate the zombies. Unfortunately, One officer was bitten by a zombie. The hefty officer didn't hesitate and promptly shot him in the head. The death of his comrade left the hefty officer conflicted. He blamed Kelly's group for the incident and even contemplated killing them. Marky pleaded desperately, but Kelly's attention was drawn to the gun at her feet. Seeing the hefty officer becoming increasingly agitated, Kelly swiftly knocked him down without hesitation. The sound of the gunshot attracted more zombies. They rush to the car and throw the cop on the ground to become zombie fast food. At this moment, Angel in the flower room has reached the end of her life. Grayson, holding scissors, prepared to end her suffering, but in the next second, Joplin begins to have inappropriate thoughts about Veronica. He ingratiated himself and even peeped at her while she was bathing. When Veronica came out of the shower, she found Grayson walking out of the flower room with his throat covered. Veronica rushed forward to check, but the mutated Angel attacked her. Joplin didn't even try to help and slammed the glass door shut. Fortunately, Veronica acted swiftly and kicked Angel into the pool. It was only then that Joplin came to check on her, but Grayson had already begun to mutate, and they had to run back inside. As Grayson hissed outside the door, Veronica tried to solve the problem by getting Joplin to hold a sheet over Grayson's head while she took a knife and stabbed him in the head. Kelly's group managed to return just in time. As they entered, Kelly saw Angel struggling in the pool. In that moment, everyone's thoughts were heavy, realizing how fragile life had become in this post-apocalyptic world. Kelly eventually shot Angel to end her suffering. Meanwhile, on the television, Rick finally saw Kelly's image and cheered, deciding that he would find his Kelly. However, Alex, who was nearby, displayed an unusual expression. In a post-apocalyptic world overrun by zombies, how long can a fragile iron gate hold up? Upon learning that Kelly was still alive, Rick was making plans to reach her. However, Alex was there to dissuade him, firmly believing that going out now would be suicidal. She proposed they stay put, citing the protective perimeter wall that could allow them to grow crops in the yard and catch fish in the river. But Rick resisted Alex's persuasion. He goes to the river to investigate and discovers that it leads directly to the area behind the reality TV set. Touched by Rick's sincerity, Alex packed up his things and set off with Rick. On the other side, trapped in a restroom, the producer Patrick finally summoned the courage to act. He disassembled a light fixture pole as a weapon and had Pippa open the door halfway. He then thrust the pole into a zombie's head, allowing them to escape. They reached the control room, where Patrick saw the surviving group on the monitors. He immediately used a loudspeaker to contact them, urging them to rescue him, but they didn't want to risk it. So, Patrick lowered the roll-down doors around them and threatened to trap them, accompanied by disturbing sound effects. With no choice, Kelly and Space ventured forth to save him. After Marky dealt with the last zombie, they safely entered the building. Suddenly, a zombie appeared and lunged at Space, but Kelly swiftly shot it down. They finally encountered Patrick. At that moment, there were more and more zombies on the outside of the film set, and they fled back. Meanwhile, Rick and Alex were already on a boat, heading up the river toward the set, but they were stopped by a sluice gate halfway up the river. Alex takes the initiative to turn on the switch, but is suddenly attacked by a walker. She fought back fiercely, using an axe to dispatch the zombie. Hearing the commotion, Rick rushed to check on her. Unfortunately, Alex had been bitten on the arm. She sat dejectedly on a stone pillar, handing her axe to Rick.
I liked our farmhouse.
On the other side, as Patrick entered the shelter, he immediately assumed a domineering attitude, acting as if everyone should obey him. This rubbed everyone the wrong way, but they had no choice but to silently endure it. Patrick proposed a ruthless plan. Since the zombies outside were all meat eaters, they could cut open a pile of meat here and throw it to the zombies. While they feasted, they could escape. Horrified by this brutal suggestion, everyone unanimously rejected it. Frustrated, Patrick decided to take matters into his own hands.
Have that. Ooh. Look at that.
Meanwhile, Space questioned Kelly if she was willing to endure Patrick's madness. Faced with a glimmer of hope, Kelly reluctantly agreed to consider the plan. Who knew? It might just work. Simultaneously, Rick's small boat finally reached the shore. After eluding pursuing zombies, he stealthily made his way to the set. While Rick searched around, Marky, who was guarding the rooftop, spotted his figure. In the midst of a zombie crisis, how long could they all survive? Pursued by zombies, Rick managed to escape after scaling a fence. However, just when he eluded the zombies' chase, he found himself in the crosshairs of someone's gun. Luckily for Rick, Marky's aim was poor, dodging several bullets. Rick hurriedly identified himself. On the rooftop, Kelly also noticed her boyfriend, Rick. Down below, the couple, who had been separated for days without knowing whether they were alive or dead, hugged each other tightly. Space led them inside and introduced Rick's identity. Before anyone could congratulate them, Patrick asked Rick how he got here, learning that Rick had come by boat. But because of the emergency, Rick didn't tie up his boat to the shore. Patrick went ballistic, mocking Rick for not being able to tie up his boat. The loss of the water route as an escape plan forced them to follow Patrick's plan. Kelly countered that no one had survived outside at this point and that they couldn't find rescue. She argued that the shelter had a sturdy perimeter fence, solar-powered equipment, and food. It was the place they should stay. However, Patrick still demanded everyone express their opinions on his plan. Seeing that no one wants to go out with him, Patrick immediately says he's going to go alone to distract the zombies and escape. He doesn't care if they live or die. Seeing that they couldn't stop Patrick, Kelly fired a warning shot. However, stubborn Patrick remained relentless. Rick had no choice but to knock Patrick unconscious with an axe and then tied him up in the bathroom. Outside, the group discussed how to deal with Patrick. Veronica says that Patrick's a man who won't stop until he gets what he wants, and he's going to open the door at the first chance he gets. Keeping Patrick is always a danger. It's better to shoot him now. Kelly suggested that with so many deaths already, maiming Patrick would suffice. Joplin comes to use the toilet. Patrick takes the opportunity to say that if he dies, Joplin will be the lowest of the low among them. Joplin would be the first to be left behind when things got tough. Patrick mocked, "Do you know what they call you behind your back? They say you're Gollum from Lord of the Rings." And then Joplin walked out.
Oh, don't do that. Gollum wanking.
This scene made Joplin's mind up. In the next second, they burst out with guns in hand. Patrick stepped forward and grabbed Kelly. He told Joplin to take the blood bait he'd prepared and go out and carry out the plan. Outside, they confronted Patrick, who retreated to a nearby car. Rick seized the opportunity, but was accidentally shot by Patrick. Kelly watched in despair as her critically injured lover lay on the ground. She picked up a fallen gun and fired several shots at the fleeing Patrick, but her aim was off. Joplin had already approached the gate and opened it without any bait. Patrick, sensing the situation, turned and ran. Joplin, not surprisingly, became the zombies' meal. They rushed back inside. Patrick tried to turn the tide with his pot of bait, not realizing that he was the bigger bait. As Patrick is devoured by zombies, a large number of zombies flood the set. Amidst the shattering glass, the remaining people inside were overtaken by the zombies. Marky and Veronica died on the spot, their agonizing screams echoing around. Kelly managed to escape to a broadcasting booth. Outside, zombies were everywhere. Space, hiding in the control room, contacted Kelly, knowing that there was no way out. Kelly said her final goodbyes to Space, and then opened the door. With dawn, everything had settled into dust.